How to keep going when everything feels heavy. We begin by acknowledging a universal truth. There are moments when the sheer momentum required to sustain daily life feels paralyzing. It is the overwhelming, pervasive sensation of heaviness, a pressure that makes the trivial, sending a text, making a cup of tea, transitioning from the sofa to the desk, feel equivalent to scaling a mountain. When this feeling persists, it is easy to default to an internal narrative of personal failure, labeling ourselves as lazy, undisciplined, or weak. However, this debilitating weight is seldom a moral failing. It is, in fact, a deeply chronic and often misunderstood biological response. This heaviness is the physiological state of a nervous system that is chronically overwhelmed, having spent too long existing in a state of low-grade, persistent threat. Our bodies are perfectly engineered to handle acute stress, the sudden surge of adrenaline required to swerve a car or meet a tight deadline. But when the stressor never truly dissipates, when the financial pressure, the familial discord, or the relentless performance demands become the default background noise, the nervous system can no longer distinguish between a genuinely life-threatening event and the simple act of checking your email inbox. The body enters a form of defensive shutdown, a resource management strategy designed for survival. Energy is consciously diverted away from complex thought, creativity, and self-discipline, and instead reserved for potential emergencies. This is the origin of the fatigue, the brain fog, and the profound difficulty with initiation. The key to moving past this heavy state is not to bully ourselves into action, but to deploy evidence-based strategies that send undeniable signals of safety and regulation to this overwhelmed nervous system. Strategy 1. The art of stress reset breathing. The first and most immediate point of intervention is the breath. The breath is our most potent, accessible, and direct link to the autonomic nervous system. The state of your inhalation and exhalation directly reflects the activity of your sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight accelerator, and the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest brake. When we are stressed, our breathing becomes shallow, rapid, and often chest-driven, dominated by the inhalation. This reinforces the brain's belief that we are under attack. To counteract this, we must consciously activate the parasympathetic system, and the most efficient way to do that is to prioritize a long, intentional exhale. This technique is often referred to as the physiological sigh, and it is profoundly effective. It involves an exaggerated double inhale, followed by an extremely slow, complete exhale. However, for simpler, structured regulation, we can employ a rhythm that directly targets the vagus nerve, the primary nerve responsible for conveying feelings of calm from the body to the brain. The instruction is simple. Inhale deeply through your nose for a count of 4. Hold that breath for a count of 4. Then, and this is the critical step, exhale very slowly and completely for a count of 6. The lengthened exhalation is essential because it stimulates the vagal fibers that decrease heart rate and blood pressure, overriding the stress response. This is not a meditative practice designed to empty the mind. It is a biofeedback mechanism designed to physically change your internal chemistry. Repeat it for just 2 minutes. This structured breath practice offers an immediate and non-negotiable stress reset. It is a moment-to-moment recalibration that asserts control over your internal state, laying the foundation for all subsequent strategies. Strategy 2. Regenerative movements over exhaustive exercise. The impulse when feeling heavy is often to try and shock the system with a grueling workout, believing that intense effort will somehow burn away the fatigue. For an already depleted system, this approach is counterproductive. It adds more perceived stress to an already stressed organism. It elevates cortisol and adrenaline, reinforcing the defensive posture. What the body truly needs is regenerative movement. This is a paradigm shift where the goal of physical activity is not exhaustion, but release and integration. Stress hormones are, fundamentally, energy molecules mobilized for action. When that action never comes, when the threat is chronic but passive, those hormones accumulate, creating tension and restlessness. Regenerative movement is the safe way to metabolize them. This involves slow, conscious activity, a gentle walking nature where the focus is on the environment, not on pace. Deep, thoughtful stretches that access points of chronic tension, or slow, restorative yoga poses. The key differentiator is intentionality. This movement must be done without an aggressive performance goal. It is about reconnecting the mind to the body, moving the accumulated chemical energy out of the system, and reminding your tissues that they are safe enough to relax. When you feel heavy, a 20-minute slow walk is infinitely more therapeutic than a 40-minute high-intensity interval training session. It is the quality of the movement, the gentleness of the integration, that ultimately resolves the biological burden of chronic stress. Strategy 3. Microdoses of genuine connection. The human nervous system evolved to operate optimally within a social context. When we feel isolated, our ancient brain centers interpret that isolation as extreme vulnerability, triggering a profound escalation of the threat response. Chronic loneliness is a powerful, silent stressor that keeps the sympathetic nervous system on high alert. To counteract this, we utilize microdoses of genuine connection. This strategy recognizes that we do not always have the time or the emotional bandwidth for a deep, lengthy conversation. However, we can actively seek out small, high-quality social interactions that signal safety. The chemical key here is oxytocin. Oxytocin is a neuropeptide that plays a crucial role in trust, bonding, and safety. Its release acts as a powerful brake on the amygdala, the brain's fear sensor. This chemical release can be triggered by surprisingly brief, non-transactional interactions. Offering sincere gratitude to a colleague, sharing a genuine laugh with the barista, or engaging in a deep, mutual gaze with the partner. Even a 20-second hug, where both individuals feel a sense of relaxed connection, can initiate this crucial chemical shift. These are not obligations. They are deliberate investments in social safety. By intentionally weaving small moments of authentic, high-quality connection into your day, you provide your nervous system with necessary, recurring evidence that you are not alone and that your environment is not universally hostile. This practice directly reduces the baseline level of stress-induced vigilance. Strategy 4. Energy management through task matching. The typical approach to a heavy workload is to treat every item on the to-do list as a high-stakes emergency, maintaining a state of continuous cognitive switching and urgency. This fractured approach is one of the primary drivers of the heavy, overwhelmed feeling, as it prevents the nervous system from ever settling into a state of sustained focus. The solution is a foundational shift from time management to energy management, utilizing a process called task batching. Our cognitive function is not linear. It cycles through periods of high and low focus, governed by what are known as ultradian rhythms, which typically operate in 90-minute cycles. Task batching involves organizing your day not by urgency, but by the type of energy required. Low-energy administrative tasks, such as clearing the email inbox, scheduling appointments, or filling out expense reports, should be batched together and reserved for your natural low-energy phases. Conversely, high-energy, complex tasks, such as creative writing, strategic planning, or deep analysis, must be reserved for your natural energy peaks.
By grouping similar cognitive demands, you reduce the mental effort required to switch between vastly different tasks. This minimization of cognitive friction lowers the overall perception of threat and increases efficiency, which in turn gives your nervous system the crucial feedback that the workload is manageable. It replaces the frantic feeling of constant reaction with the grounded, calming sense of thoughtful execution. Strategy 5. The power of stress reframe. Finally, we arrive at the internal narrative, the way we interpret our body's physical reaction to pressure. The landmark research by psychologist Kelly McGonigal demonstrates a profound finding. It is not stress itself that is inherently damaging, but the belief that stress is toxic and debilitating. When you are heavy and faced with a significant demand, your heart may pound, your palms may sweat, and your breathing may quicken. If your internal voice says, "I am collapsing, I cannot handle this," you compound the physiological stress with debilitating psychological stress. The stress reframe strategy involves changing the internal interpretation of these physical symptoms. When your heart pounds, you consciously tell yourself, "My body is mobilizing energy to help me meet this challenge." This is a sign of preparation, power, and readiness, not a sign of collapse. This is more than positive thinking. When you interpret the physiological arousal as a helpful energy source, your blood vessels remain relaxed, contrasting sharply with the constriction that occurs when stress is viewed as purely harmful. This reframe transforms a perceived threat into a valuable internal resource, allowing you to access the mobilized energy without the corresponding damage to your cardiovascular system. It is the ultimate assertion of control. You are not a victim of your stress. You are the manager of your own biological response to challenge. In summary, the journey toward overcoming the heaviness is a sophisticated engagement with your own biology. It requires you to stop trying to force discipline upon an exhausted system and instead focus on regulation. By strategically deploying the stress reset breath, engaging in regenerative movement, investing in microdoses of connection, managing your energy through task batching, and consciously practicing the stress reframe, you are gently but firmly negotiating a new, safer baseline for your nervous system, allowing you to keep going, not through brute force, but through deep biological wisdom.